everybody, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am your host, Taylor Rockwell. Darrell Grove, not yet back from Boston. Hopefully will be soon. So instead, I'm going to be talking to Graham Ruthven of Eurosport. He covers La Liga for Eurosport and is going to be talking about La Liga with me today. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the big three, such as they are right now, of Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, and then Real Madrid. But we start off this episode talking a bit more about like some of the smaller teams, some of the teams that are a bit more exciting, or that maybe if you're trying to get into La Liga, you might want to pay attention to. But then obviously we do cover some of the bigger stories. What will happen with Neymar? What will happen with Gareth Bale? How is it possible that both Real Madrid and Barcelona are able to spend all the money? And I think a very interesting one is sort of what Atletico Madrid are doing to sort of change their very identifiable style into something a bit more pretty, which is not a thing that you usually think of when you think of Diego Simeone tactics and ruthlessness. But we'll see what happens. So Graham has lots of great explanations for what's going to be going on in La Liga and what has already been going on this summer. So I will now turn it over to Graham explaining all those things. With me now, back on the show, I think making his second appearance, is Mr. Graham Ruthven, who covers La Liga for Eurosport. Graham, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today.
No problem. It's good to be on again.
So I want to get right to it because time is of the essence. We've got La Liga right around the corner. Sid Lowe tweeted out today that no one has the rights to broadcast La Liga in the UK. He said the league decided that none of the bids were acceptable and effectively ditched the process. I guess maybe talks are ongoing. From what you know or from what you've heard of the situation, is that La Liga like having too high of expectations, or is that just kind of broadcasters not valuing La Liga in the UK?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, it is an interesting situation. So last season there was a new broadcaster that popped up called 11 Sports. They wanted to do the whole cord cutting thing that has worked in the US, particularly with ESPN Plus. And so they bought the La Liga rights, which had previously been held by Sky. And Sky, as I'm sure you know, are the big dogs over here. You know, they have the Premier League and so on. And they also bought Italian soccer rights, Serie A. They also had Eredivisie from Holland. But the whole venture wasn't very successful. They actually wanted to have a channel on the Sky platform, so they would be on television. That never materialised. So the streaming, they had to stream. There were no like kind of Chromecast options or anything like that. So you basically had to stream through your computer or phone, and I don't think it was very successful. And so the rights have kind of been fragmented away. I mean, Premier Sports took some La Liga rights last season when it looked like 11 might actually fold before the end of the season. I think Premier have taken the Serie A rights for this season. So it's a strange situation where no one's really sure what's happening with anything. I would be surprised if we went through a whole season with La Liga not being on UK TV. I think eventually either Sky or BT, who are the other kind of big broadcasters over here, they will take that. And La Liga, while they might not get the money that they wanted, because I think 11 were probably paying quite a pretty penny for those rights. I don't think Sky or BT will do that. But for La Liga to not have eyeballs on their league in the UK, which is one of the biggest markets in Europe, is just unacceptable. So I think that will be resolved one way or another over the coming weeks.
So that's in the UK. In the US, I do think like La Liga has certainly dedicated viewers, watchers, a lot of people big fans of Barca Real, obviously. But it does feel like it's a league that maybe neutrals, people who just like watch the Premier League or the Bundesliga, maybe skip over. And I feel like that's because you have the three big teams and then sort of a lot of also-rans. My question for you, like we'll get to the big teams. Don't worry, people who want to hear about the big teams. But my question for you, Graham, is like for some of the like maybe like the second tier, third tier teams in La Liga, who do you personally find the most enjoyable to watch? If people want to get into La Liga this season, don't want to support one of the big three, who else is out there that you think can be very enjoyable?
It depends what you're looking for, of course. If you are a fan of an underdog story, Getafe last season were an excellent story. Very very close to finishing in the Champions League places, which was sensational. They eventually finished it in the Europa League places. In terms of like style of play, I guess like some like Huesca last season, who had a poor season, dropped out of the league, but they were excellent to watch. I mean, they played a great kind of brand of football. So I think if you are a neutral and you maybe don't know that much about La Liga, I would say the quality throughout the league. So I watch leagues around the world, and I cover a lot of Premier League as well. I would actually say the quality, the watermark in La Liga in terms of technical ability, the actual quality of the players is higher than the Premier League. I think there are teams lower down that table that can go to. I mean, we saw Real Madrid losing how many games? I think they lost 13 games last season. A lot of them to teams lower down the league. So there is a lot of quality throughout the league. I mean, Valencia this season and the last part of last season were excellent. They've spent a bit of money. I would say Sevilla this season are going to be hugely interesting because Monchi is back as a sporting director after that strange little stint in Rome, and Lopetegui is the manager there as well after his disaster at Real Madrid last year and obviously at Spain at the World Cup. So there's huge amount of interest all the way through the league. I mean, Real Betis were excellent at times last season. They've now got Nabil Fekir from Lyon. They have lost Giovanni Lo Celso, but all the way through the league, I think there is interest, not just in the top three. I mean, I know we're going to get to it. I think actually this season is, in terms of that 3-horse race, is maybe the most compelling there's been for a number of years. So I'm not saying that isn't of interest. But if you're one of those people who wants to see quality further down the league, I mean, Spain has loads for you.
I'm really curious about that, but I had a follow-up on Real Betis. I am really curious about Giovanni Lo Celso because he was on loan at Betis last season, at least from my understanding. I can't claim to have been up to date with the ins and outs of Real Betis, but basically on loan last season from PSG, scored 16 goals, 45 appearances. They trigger his purchase option in April of 2019, then loan him to Tottenham with an option to buy this summer. Is this basically just a case of they know he's going to go for big money, so they want to buy him now, so then they can make money off of him later? Or is it basically just trying to make sure PSG doesn't get that money and they do instead?
Yeah, I mean, I think the purchase offer on Lo Celso from PSG, I know this gets very complicated, I think was a minimal amount. So Betis, as you rightfully point out there, Lo Celso had been excellent for them last season. It got to a stage of the season where there was talk about him being a target for Premier League clubs, maybe even for Real Madrid, who were linked. And so it became clear that they were going to get the money. They were going to get more money than the purchase offer from PSG. Obviously, this is all complicated by the fact that they've now loaned, they've basically done with Tottenham what PSG did with them, which is, a loan deal with an option to purchase. But I think that was more on the basis of what Spurs wanted because they were spending big on Sessegnon. They'd already signed Tanguy Ndombele, and they were kind of in for Dybala as well. So it's more I think Betis would have rathered a straight sale, having the money this summer, but they know that Spurs will pay the money next season. I think it might actually be mandatory. I think it might actually be, it's not an option, it might be a mandatory that Spurs pay the money next year. I could be wrong on that, but I think that could be the way that deal is structured.
Deals are always so confusing to me when there's mandatory options versus optional options. It seems like it kind of defeats the purpose of it being an option, but whatever. So that's Betis. Sevilla, I have them as the Sevilla reclamation project for the reason you mentioned. I wanted to ask about your thoughts on Lopetegui for a second, because you're absolutely right. We remember him for Real Madrid, or not remember him well for Madrid, and then again for being axed by Spain. I sort of don't know what to make of him. What type of manager do you think he is, and what are your expectations for Sevilla this season?
He's a pure coach, Lopetegui. I mean, I think some of the concerns against him are that he's maybe not the most commanding and as a persona, as a character in the dressing room, but there's no denying that he is a very good coach. I think Lopetegui needs this to go well. I mean, that obviously goes without saying, but he has become almost like a David Moyes figure in Spanish football, in that wherever he's turned up the last year or so, things have just gone against him, things that aren't necessarily his fault. I mean, he turned up at Sevilla on his first training session. There was a video that came out of him being absolutely slammed in the face by a shot, from a wayward shot from a player, from one of the Sevilla players, and you just think, is this guy just cursed? I mean, that he goes to Sevilla, where they're, a fresh start, he's a lot of faith getting put in him, and within his first day, he's already getting mocked because he's taken a ball to the face. So I think it's going to be very interesting. I mean, they've lost Ben Yedder or they're in the process. I'm not sure if that deal has gone through yet at the time of recording, but he's off to Monaco. Pablo Sarabia has gone to PSG. So Ben Yedder was their top scorer. Sarabia was their best kind of creator. So those are big holes to fill. But they have spent, I think, around 100 million euros on Joan Jordan and Lucas Ocampos, and I think they've got Sergio Reguilon on loan from Real Madrid. So there is a bit of quality there, and Monchi is back. I think him going back to Sevilla is just as significant as Lopetegui pitching up there, because we all know what he did at the club previously, and if he can do half of what he did before, they'll have a successful season.
That makes sense to me. All of that very valid. I am still obsessed with the idea that like somewhere Lopetegui has like bothered a witch, and it is indeed a curse. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. But I also wanted to talk about the big three. I believe, I don't want to misquote you, but I believe you were saying that it's like you think it's going to be very competitive, or maybe the most competitive, which is surprising to me because the narrative surrounding, say, Real Madrid is that they're in a bit of shambles, whereas maybe Barcelona and Atleti have strengthened. So I'm wondering like why you're feeling it's going to be so competitive up top.
Yeah, well, I mean, the team that I think are going to challenge Barcelona the most this season is probably Atletico Madrid. Yeah. We've all seen the business that they've done. It's not just the business that they've done, because obviously they've spent big in recent seasons as well. What Simeone has tried to do this summer is a very, very deliberate change of style. So Atletico Madrid have always been well organised, well drilled at the back, keep it compact, good on the counter attack. Fantastic team spirit. Simeone, I think it's called Chilismo, is his ideology, which is very much close to the kind of the underdog spirit. Even when Atletico Madrid were winning league titles and Champions League finals, they've always kind of thrived on this underdog idea. And Simeone has kind of recognised that can only take them so far. They can never be the front runner like that. So this summer, he's completely changed style. He wants to make them expressive, expansive. He wants to make them entertaining. I think the days, if this is successful anyway, I think the days of Atletico winning every game at home 1-0 are maybe over, and they might concede a few goals because they've lost Godin, Felipe Luis. There's a lot of kind of turnover there, and they've spent big on players who are minded on going forward. So João Felix, who looks fantastic, by the way. I mean, probably the best teenager I've seen in European soccer for a long time. Mm-hmm. Kieran Trippier signed, Rodrigo Moreno. I don't think that deal's done yet, but he will come from Valencia. Signing Morata permanently from Chelsea. Marcos Llorente from Real Madrid, which is an interesting one. So they're very much trying to change the character of the team there. What I would say is Simeone tried something similar last summer. He knew this had to happen as long ago as last summer, and he kind of abandoned it. The first few weeks of the season, or the first few months of the season, didn't go so well for Atleti, and he kind of abandoned it and went back to the default setting. This summer, he's gone full in on it, and the preseason has been positive. I mean, I think we all saw that game where Atleti scored 7 against Real Madrid in New Jersey. So I think they're the team that are going to be up there with Barcelona. Real Madrid are an interesting one because it feels like they could have a good season, but it equally feels like they could have, it's a 50-50 kind of shot, isn't it? It feels like things could click and Zidane could find his team, and Eden Hazard could light it up, and Luka Jovic could score 20 goals and help Benzema out, and Ferland Mendy could solve the problem that Marcelo had at left back last season. But it also feels like there's something simmering at that club. I'd compare it to Jose Mourinho at Manchester United last year, where pre-season is only pre-season, but you do get a sense for the camp and the mood in the camp, and you knew with Mourinho last season at Manchester United they were just going to have a bad season because there was a bad vibe in that group. And I think it's quite similar with Real Madrid. I mean, there's already talk that Zidane and Florentino Perez are clashing over not getting Paul Pogba, despite the fact that 300 million euros has been spent on other players, and it just feels like it could kick off. But if they get an opening weekend win against Celta Vigo at Balados, which has always been a difficult place for Real Madrid to go, then momentum builds and all these problems disappear. So it's difficult to know what to expect from Real Madrid this season. And then, of course, Barcelona, the big signing there is Antoine Griezmann, who, if you ask me, is a player they didn't need. And I'm not entirely... That's not a comment on Antoine Griezmann. I think Griezmann is a fantastic player, but where does he fit in? I think he is maybe the long-term successor to. Well, I say long-term. I mean, how old is Antoine Griezmann? He's 27, 28. Yeah. So he's coming into his peak as well. So he is the long-term successor, if I can say that term, long-term, to Luis Suarez. But Luis Suarez is, still one of the best strikers in European soccer. So how are they going to fit him into that team? I think what Griezmann will do is in pre-season, because Messi's got a calf injury at the moment, they're having to play without Messi and he'll miss the first few weeks of the season. And I think Griezmann has given Barcelona a way to play without Lionel Messi, which is important because last season we saw Ernesto Valverde trying to rest Messi, keep him fresh for the latter stages of the season. And each time he almost had to come off the bench to save Barcelona because they don't know how to play without him. And I think that'll be where Griezmann does make a difference, is I think he gives them a way to play without Messi. But having moved to Barcelona for 100 million euros or whatever it was, is Antoine Griezmann going to be happy with just being the Lionel Messi deputy who gets wheeled out for Copa del Rey early round games? I mean, I just don't see how that's going to work. I think Frenkie de Jong is a great signing for them. I think he'll fit in perfectly. And I think Barcelona will be strong because, Lionel Messi. I mean, any team that's got Lionel Messi is going to be up there. But I think it is an extremely compelling season because, as I say, you don't know what to expect from Real Madrid. Atletico Madrid are going to be strong as they have been in recent years, but they're going to be strong in a different way. They're going to be a different team. And then, of course, you've got questions over Barcelona and Antoine Griezmann. So, yeah, really interesting this season.
More still to come from my conversation with Graham Ruthven, but his Scottish brogue reminded me that I wanted some Englishness in my life. So I've got Darrell Grove on the line. Hello, Daryl.
Hello, here's my English voice. How you doing?
It's lovely. I'm doing well. It's nice here in Richmond. It is not 1,000 degrees. It's just close to 1,000 degrees. So a nice change of pace for us.
Remember to wear sunscreen.
I shall. But yes, we have Darrell Grove, who's still in Boston, returns this evening. We'll be back in studio tomorrow. But for now, I wanted to talk to you.
My checkout time is 30 minutes, so I've got to do this, pack, and then head to the airport. Yeah.
All right, let's get it going quickly, because I do have a sort of transfer quiz for you. But first, I feel like we should talk about our friends, and I mean that like literally and figuratively, our friends over at Ledbury.
Yes, friends and sometimes our relatives, right, who work at Ledbury.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, it's my brother-in-law who is, I hope, always my relative. So yes, not sometimes my relative.
Who designed our logo, right? He designed our logo,
and
he designed the Soccer 101 logo. Yeah.
And he's designed all the logos for the other podcasts I'm going to launch behind your back. It's really exciting.
Sounds good. So Ledbury is, initially a shirt company, right?
Yes.
So they launched in the late aughts, and it's our friend Paul Watson, Paul and Paul.
Yep.
Our friend Paul Watson is one of the co-founders, and we didn't talk about this on the last show, but I remember when they launched, the big deal was the magic button. Do you remember all the hype about the magic button?
I forgot about the magic button. Can you explain?
So you know how like if you can button your shirt all the way to the top. Mm-hmm. Or you can undo the top collar button, but then that next button down is on most shirts is still a little too high. Yep. But then if you undo that second button, then there's chest hair everywhere.
Oh yeah,
and you look like some sort of weird Lothario.
Yeah, then you've got to get a gold chain. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, then you got to invest in gold chains, right? And and fake suntan and everything. So what they did at Ledbury is they just moved that second button a little lower. They kind of split the difference between buttons 2 and 3. So if you go, obviously you can wear it all the way buttoned up with a tie and all that if you want. But if you unbutton the top button, the collar button, the second one is perfectly located. So it's not too high up and not too far down.
Yes, and that makes the shirts incredibly nice, but then the design, the patterns, the different colors, everything that goes into, high-end, very nice shirts.
Yeah.
It makes it then problematic, though, because when we do interact with Paul, you and I wear what we wear to record, which is not very nice, like, tailored button-up shirts. Paul does. We look like slobs.
I'm wearing a T-shirt from Target with the Millennium Falcon on it.
I've got a Carhartt shirt on, so you're in good company, my friend. Yes, so then hanging out with Paul, it's a little bit difficult. It's why I like playing soccer with him, because at least then he's not usually wearing a button-up.
He has to dress down.
He does. We force him to. But the reason why we're talking about Ledbury is because they have their the Ledbury Legendary, is what I'm going to call it, warehouse sale at their flagship store here in Richmond. If you are in the kind of central Virginia area from August 21st to the 25th, the warehouse sale is going on. That means categories. Shirts starting at $29, pants at $59, sport coats from $200, lots of other categories available at discounts up to 75%. But Daryl, if people aren't in Virginia, why should they care?
They should care because they can still go online to ledbury.com, Ledbury.
Thank you for that.
.com, named after the English street in London. And you can get 20% off your first purchase with the code TSS 2019. TSS 2019 is good for 20% off your first purchase of a Ledbury shirt.
And that means you're helping a local company here in Richmond, but you can help them despite not being local yourself. So if you're on the West Coast, if you're in Alaska, if you're anywhere else, you can go online, get those shirts, and get that discount. But again, it's very nice products and a variety of different styles and cuts and fashions and all that good stuff. So
I can't believe at the legendary Ledbury warehouse sale I just talked about. You said shirts starting at $29. That's like a fifth of the usual price, right? That's a huge discount.
It's so much of a discount that then when occasionally I'll be like, "Ooh, that's a nice shirt," and it's a full price one, I'm like, "Oh no." So it's a great opportunity. We hope people will check it out. Once again, TSS 2019 to get 20% off from the Ledbury site. A link obviously will be in the show notes. Daryl, the reason why I'm excited to have you on is because I gave you the quiz on the first Matt Herman episode. That was mostly about Bundesliga related stuff. This time the transfer window has been going. I don't know how much attention you've been paying to it, so I feel like
not that much. So I'm a little nervous about it.
Yeah, I want to ask you some transfer questions and see how well you do.
Okay.
We'll start with one, since this is going to be on the Graham La Liga preview show. I'll ask you this: at time of recording, this is Thursday, just after noon. Who has spent more money in the summer window so far, Real Madrid or Barcelona?
Ooh.
It's a strange one. It's a strange one because, I'll leave it there. I'll let you take a guess.
De Jong. They didn't get Neymar yet, right? Which might be the big purchase. Real Madrid spent almost 100 million on Hazard, right? Mm-hmm. And they spent 50 on a defender. I'm going to say it's Real Madrid.
It is Real Madrid. You are correct.
Yes.
In dollars, I think Madrid have spent around 350 million to Barcelona's paltry 300 million or thereabouts. But yeah, it's because Madrid's players, I feel kind of go under the radar a little bit because there's Eden Hazard, there's Jovic, Militao is the one you were referring to, and then Ferland Mendy, Rodrigo. Whereas Barcelona's, aside from Frankie de Jong and Antoine Griezmann, have been Neto, a replacement goalkeeper, a right back, Junior Firpo, the left back. So yeah, I think it's easy to kind of focus on the bigger ones, but we'll see how much that changes if Neymar does indeed move to one of those teams. I imagine that figure will change.
I forgot about Antoine Griezmann. I think if I'd remembered him and the money that he cost, I might have said Barcelona.
All right. Well, I'm glad you did not. So you're 1 for 1 so far. Next question for you. Which player moved for the biggest fee so far this summer?
In the whole world?
Yes, and I can give you a hint if you would like.
Have we seen him play in Orlando?
That was your hint.
It's João Felix.
It is João Felix.
126 million euros to Atletico Madrid.
You are correct. All right, 2 for 2. See, you were nervous about this one.
Didn't even need the hints.
Here's another one that relates to Atleti. Of the top 10 transfers this summer, 3 have been center backs. 1 is Lucas Hernandez, who moved from Atleti to Bayern. I gave you that one. Who are the other 2? And again, I have hints for you if you so need.
Is one of them Rodri to Man City?
He's not a center back.
Oh, sorry. What? Can you tell me the question again? I thought this was about Atleti transfers.
No. I said of the top 10 transfers this summer, 3 have been center backs. One of them was Lucas Hernandez. Who are the other 2 center backs who have moved for big money this summer?
Oh, so this is not La Liga specific necessarily, because one of them has to be De Ligt.
It does.
Going to Juve for 67 or so. Harry
right.
Maguire, 80 million pounds to Manchester United.
Look at this. You're 3 for 3.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a slightly harder one then. I
feel like you've underestimated me so far.
I'm just trying to be a pal.
You've misunderestimated me.
All right. Here's one for you. This one's a little tougher. Vincent Kompany is going to be the player manager of Anderlecht, which is a thing I forgot briefly. Anderlecht being his boyhood club.
Do I win?
You do not. Which, I'll say controversial, former Man City teammate did the club bring in on a free transfer?
Which controversial former Man City player did Anderlecht bring in on a free transfer?
Yes. Again, I have hints if you would like.
Controversial.
Oh, and
I thought Balotelli's still in negotiations elsewhere.
I was going to say, hint number 1 is that it's not Mario Balotelli.
Okay. Ooh, I don't know. Can you give me a couple of hints? Is there any era or so?
This player has also played for, in not this order, Marseille, Arsenal, West Ham, and Antalyaspor. And then maybe your final hint is that, and then he didn't play for a while.
Emmanuel Adebayor?
No, it is Samir Nasri.
Samir Nasri. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Back to Anderlecht. So 3 for 4.
He's going to destroy. He's going to destroy in Belgium.
Yes, he is. It's going to be interesting, I guess. I mean, but by the same token, I think he moved on a free from West Ham. So I'm assuming he will destroy, but we'll wait and see. Yeah. My final one for you. We'll just do it this way. There have been a lot of players who have moved that kind of I think went under the radar a little bit. A simple one. This is not La Liga related. I would like to know which country Marko Arnautovic now plays in.
Oh no.
It's telling that I asked you for the country, if that helps at all, as opposed to the individual team, because you might not even know the team.
Is it China?
It is China. There you go, buddy. Good job. 4 for 5, Darrell Grove. That's a solid performance.
As Meatloaf definitely said, 4 out of 5 ain't bad, right?
That's definitely what he said. I do have one more for you. Have you had enough? Should we get to today's sponsor, or should we do one more question?
I've got time for one more.
All right.
I'm not sure my boutique hotel feels the same way, but let's do it anyway.
All right. The final one, this one's a little bit tougher. This is the one that kind of started this. This was the first question I came up with because I was like, wait, what happened now? Likely in an effort to not fall further into financial ruin, Fulham loaned which creative playmaker to Galatasaray for the coming season?
Fulham loaned a playmaker to Galatasaray.
I would consider him a playmaker. Yes.
It's not Mitrovic, right? Because he's a striker.
Correct.
I can't think of Fulham having a playmaker. Am I missing someone?
Let me rephrase it too. How about a midfielder? A central midfielder.
No, I'm blanking. I'm sorry. I know that maybe
Seri.
You think of him as a playmaker?
I guess so, yeah. He's like a central midfielder. He pulls some strings, or at least theoretically does, until Fulham are terrible.
I mean, if I was feeling more competitive, I'd be appealing on a technicality here, but okay.
I'm not giving you that.
Jean-Michel Seri has gone to Galatasaray. Did not know that.
Yeah.
That's not how his Premier League move was supposed to work out, is it?
Not so much, no. Yeah, so I think still an admirable performance by you, so well done. And no more quizzes for you, at least until you get back to the studio, in which case I may have another one. But before we get back to my conversation with Graham Ruthven, we should also talk about today's sponsor. Still a new sponsor, even though we've done one ad already. But I consider them new and exciting. It's Feels.
It's their sophomore episode.
It is. Feels, spelled F-E-A-L-S, as opposed to F-E-E-L-S, but I see what they're doing there, is a better way to feel better. Their premium CBD will keep your head clear and help you feel your best. It's been proven to greatly reduce anxiety, pain, and sleeplessness.
So it's CBD oil, and from what I remember, you drop it under your tongue because they sent us a nice sample kit. This was the first time I'd ever tried any CBD oil, and I wouldn't call myself an anxious person. It's not like something that I struggle with. But what I did find is that after I'd taken a drop of Feels, I did some scouting assignments, and normally I really go back and forth on, is this the right person? Like I sort of second guess myself on who I'm assigning to whom. And I found myself just being much more decisive after my drop of Feels, which I guess is probably a reduction in. I guess second guessing is a form of a low level form of anxiety, right? So it absolutely removed that for me, and I assigned scouts with no second guessing.
I'm glad you bring that up because I think CBD, not the THC infused kind or whatever. The THC has been removed, so it's legal to
very legal, very legal. Can't get in trouble with CBD.
But because of that connection, I think we do, or at least I do, tend to associate it with you have some of that, and then you relax, like you hang out, you're doing other stuff, whatever. Maybe it makes yard work fun. But you're absolutely right that it does help me. I feel like to stay a little bit more focused or a little bit more involved when I'm doing research or reading about a player or sending emails or stuff. Yeah, it helps me feel sharper for sure.
Lovely.
Yeah. And so you can basically check out Feels. You can see if CBD is right for you. They ship directly to your doorstep in only a few days. So it's the new, natural, healthy, better way to feel better.
And if you're new to CBD, Feels offers a free CBD hotline and text message support to help guide you through your personal experience.
Yes. So if you want to check out what Feels has on offer, you can become a member today by going to feels.com/TSS, and you'll get 50% off your first order with free shipping. That's FEALS.com/TSS to become a member and get 50% off automatically taken off your first order with free shipping.
Can I say the URL as well? It's feels.com/TSS. Now I feel part of things.
I mean, you didn't wait for me to say yes, but yes, you can. That's fine. All right.
It's better to ask forgiveness than permission.
I suppose that's true. Thank you very much to Feels for sponsoring today's episode. Daryl, thank you for potentially stressing out your boutique hotel. If so, you should just give them some Feels, and I'm sure they'll feel better.
Yeah.
But I appreciate
I might need to give myself a drop of Feels so I can focus on my packing, get it done fast.
It will... If it helps, it will never be as tense or as close as our trip to the Orlando airport. So at least there's that.
I'm going to remember that day forever.
I will never forget the feeling of relief getting into the sort of what is it, like the jetway or whatever it's called, when the person checking people in for the flight said you had one more minute. It was like, wow, okay, all right.
And someone else said these guys ran track.
That's right. That's right. The full sprint. But yes, that can also alleviate the anxiety for sure. But Daryl, thank you again for taking the time to chat with me, do some quizzing, and now I suppose we will get back to my conversation with Graham. Who do you think plays the most games for Barcelona this season? Ousmane Dembele, Felipe Coutinho, or Neymar?
Well, you're asking me to make a judgment on whether Neymar is going to end up at Barcelona there.
It was my backdoor way of doing that, yes.
Yes. That's another interesting one, because all the movement in Spain at the moment, I mean, if that's the way you want to lead into that topic,
sure.
all the movement in Spain at the moment is with Neymar is towards Real Madrid, which is really interesting, you know. And while Neymar is I always felt that when he went to PSG, that is what would happen. I actually, in a very cynical way, thought that was the plan all along. Was you can't, I mean, unless you're Luis Figo, you can't go from Barcelona to Real Madrid. So the way to get there is.
Yeah, and if you do, then you get a pig's head thrown at you. So you don't want to do that either.
No, you don't want to do that. That's bad times. So I actually thought that was a long-term plan all along. But then, you know, Real Madrid this summer have spent, 60 million euros on Luka Jovic. They've, Eden Hazard is in that team. So it almost feels like this wasn't their plan. You know, it feels like, well, if you were going to get Neymar and you're going to get Hazard, you know, why did you then go and spend money on Jovic if you're keeping Benzema around as well? So I don't think it seems like a plan. It just plays into the idea that I'm not entirely sure there's been much of a strategy at Real Madrid over the summer if he goes there. And I think that's looking as likely, if not more likely, than Barcelona. Of course, what Barcelona have, as you kind of allude to there, is they've got chips that they can put into the deal with Dembele, Coutinho. Nelson Semedo has been mentioned. Malcolm went to Zenit St. Petersburg, of course, but he was mentioned as a player that might be included in the deal. So I don't know how to answer that one, because it obviously depends on where Neymar ends up. I would be disappointed if Dembele left Barcelona, because I think he gives them something a little bit different, and I think we saw last season he was starting to really embrace that the pressure of playing for Barcelona, and I think he has developed a lot and grown a lot as well as a person. So I'd be disappointed. I don't think Coutinho's got much of a future at Barcelona, and I think it's a matter of time. I think, I don't know where he's going to end up, to be honest. Bayern Munich has been mentioned most recently. I don't think he would suit them either. But the Neymar thing is very interesting. My hunch in all this is that he doesn't move anywhere. He stays at PSG for another season. But, you know, if I were to pick Barcelona or Real Madrid, I think Real Madrid seem to be putting a lot into this, particularly to try and appease Zidane, who is already unhappy that he's not getting the players that he wants. So, yeah, very interesting.
You mentioned earlier, is that like specifically just Paul Pogba, or do you think there were other people that he had like on a short list that didn't come through? Because it did feel Zidane coming back like it was going to be even more control for him, which maybe would be a good thing. It felt like things like should turn around and be all, happy-go-lucky, hunky-dory, and instead it does feel very tense at Madrid right now. So is it just the failure to acquire Paul Pogba, or do you think there's other things at play as well?
I think there's always other things at play at Real Madrid. I think it probably does stem from the Paul Pogba thing. Zidane we all saw it earlier in the summer. He was very public about praising Paul Pogba and saying he was a player that he would like. So that suggests to me that's quite unusual from Zidane. He's not the type of manager who will come out and speak about other players unless he has a strong feeling that player is going to be his very shortly. And I think he probably believed Paul Pogba would be a Real Madrid player by now. And obviously that looks like it's not going to happen now with the Premier League window being shut. So I think it seems like he's maybe, I'm only going on what's been reported here. I don't have any kind of information myself, but it seems like he's been promised certain things, and then 300 million euros has been spent, and all of a sudden Perez has kind of pulled the purse strings tight and said there's no more money for. I mean, it's not just Pogba. Christian Eriksen was another one that's been linked. And it seems like that trail's gone a little bit cold. And if he's going to end up in Spain, it's actually going to be at Atleti rather than Real Madrid. So it just seems like Zidane was quite clearly lured back to Real Madrid on this promise that he would have full control over, I think, transfers primarily, because he recognised the summer that he left that the squad needed an overhaul, and he wasn't given that freedom. And the idea was that this summer he would be. And I think the initial signs were obviously very good. They spent a lot of money very quickly. But I think Zidane probably expected a little bit more, particularly in the centre of midfield, where Modric and Toni Kroos obviously they're excellent players, legends of the game actually, but they've been in decline for a season or two. Luka Modric had his worst season for Real Madrid last year, which is ironic because obviously he won the Ballon d'Or, which was a little bit strange. But
forget about that. Yeah,
it's a strange little quirk. I think we'll look back at that in history and kind of go, what happened there? Because Luka Modric, great player, and has been a fantastic player for Real Madrid. But as I say, last season was his worst season for Real Madrid, and there were those links with Inter Milan and AC Milan and Serie A. So and Toni Kroos as well hasn't been his usual self. So I think Zidane in that midfield area probably thought they were going to get a big name. Donny van de Beek from Ajax has been linked now. I actually think he would be an excellent signing. I would argue that I would have him higher on the list than Paul Pogba, because I think Paul Pogba, the way he plays, Real Madrid needs someone to control things in the middle, and Paul Pogba's not that player. He's basically Paul Pogba as an attacker, attacking midfielder. And Van de Beek would be fantastic for Real Madrid. So they could still turn things around with that signing. I actually think that would be a very shrewd signing. But yeah, I think it probably stems from promises that have not yet been delivered for Zinedine Zidane.
And then the other sort of, not even big talking point, but just weird talking point has been Gareth Bale. Similar to like Zidane talking about, maybe like he spoke a little bit prematurely about Pogba thinking he was arriving. There've been plenty of quotes from Zidane, especially this offseason, about how Gareth Bale was leaving. Instead, Gareth Bale's still there. Like, what do you think? Two questions here. First off, like, how would you, as best you can, explain what has happened to Gareth Bale at Real Madrid? Because it sounds like it just goes back to him thinking he was fit and not being fit. But then I'm also wondering how you think this plays out. There was interest from China. That didn't happen. Premier League window closed. It feels like he's going to spend his whole season playing golf, and I'm sort of surprised by that.
Yeah. I mean, the whole golf thing has been really interesting in Spain. I mean, I think this term often gets used too often and is often applied incorrectly. But I think in this case it's justified. Gareth Bale has become a scapegoat in Spain, particularly for the Madrid media. I mean, they often need a scapegoat, a scapegoat to the Madrid media. But and Bale has taken on that role. I mean. Yeah, I'm not saying Gareth Bale is completely flawless. I mean, one of the things he certainly should have made more an effort to do is to learn Spanish. I mean, I think that is a failing on his behalf. I mean, how long has he been there? 6 years, as long as that, something around there. And it seems like he can't speak a word of Spanish. He can't even hold the most basic of conversations in Spanish. So that is obviously a failing and doesn't endear himself too much. But the number of times last season Gareth Bale would come off the bench or would play in Copa del Rey games, and he was clearly the best player on the pitch. I think so. Real Madrid played a pre-season game against Arsenal, and they were 2-0 down at half-time, and Arsenal could have been 3 or 4, and Gareth Bale came off the bench, and that was right at the height of the rumours that he was going to go to China. And it seemed imminent in the next couple of days. So no one actually expected him to play again for Real Madrid. He came off the bench at half-time. I think he scored to make it 2-1 and then maybe set up the goal for 2-2. And all of a sudden he was the best player on the pitch. And that's quite common for Gareth Bale, is that when he does play, you think, wow, this guy is arguably Real Madrid's best player. I mean, I know that's a bold statement to make, particularly for a player they're trying to get rid of, but the difference he makes so frequently when he comes on or plays is stark, and you just think this whole situation is bizarre. And I've written about it. It's a lot of it is about understanding the culture of Real Madrid as a club and the socios of the club as well, and what they demand from their players, and they very much kind of loyalty is not kind of top. At other clubs, loyalty is often valued more than anything else, and the fan favourites are the most loyal players. But at Real Madrid, it's about the players who will deliver success in the immediate term, and that's why you get boos for Cristiano Ronaldo when he has like two bad games for Real Madrid, doesn't score for 2 games, he gets whistled. It's a very different club. It's a very different culture to most other clubs, and I think Bale's been caught up in this. As to how it ends, I really have no idea. It seems unlikely that he's going to leave Real Madrid now. As you say, the Premier League window is closed. I think it's quite funny that Manchester United, for the past 5 years, the 2 players that they have pursued for such a long time, year after year, they go back to Real Madrid asking, can we get Ronaldo? No. Can we get Gareth Bale? No. And then those 2 players in successive summers were available, and Manchester United weren't interested. So I find that quite funny. The Spurs thing was a non-starter for me because of their wage structure. The only way that was going to happen was if Real Madrid were going to pay, half his wages, which I suppose, could happen. There's precedent for that. Manchester United paid half of Wayne Rooney's wages at Everton when he went there. So and obviously the Chinese window is now closed as well, so that opportunity is gone. I think I always thought Italy would maybe be. I always thought he seemed like maybe a bit of an Inter Milan signing, but now Antonio Conte is there, and I don't think Bale is an Antonio Conte's type of player.
Not so much now.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that Bale, we all know Conte wants complete commitment from his players, and Bale. That's the criticism of him at Real Madrid. So I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for Gareth Bale. I actually wrote an article for 442, I think last week or the week before, trying to pick a positive out of it if I could, from Bale's perspective. In that, the last kind of big name British player to be at Real Madrid was, of course, David Beckham, and David Beckham found himself frozen out at Real Madrid as well. When he announced that he was going to go and play for the LA Galaxy, Fabio Capello said that he would never play for Real Madrid again. He, through an injury crisis, came on in a game against Real Sociedad, either scored an equaliser or set up an equaliser, and so forced his way back into the team that way, and actually was a key figure by the end of the season as Real Madrid won La Liga. Real Madrid tried to actually postpone his move to LA Galaxy because they were so convinced that they were turned, or they did a U-turn on David Beckham. So there will be an opportunity for Bale if he stays. Marco Asensio is out for the season, who plays in the same kind of position as Bale. Vinicius Junior is still only a teenager, so there'll be inconsistencies there. So somewhere throughout the season there will be a chance for Bale. He just needs to make sure that he takes it and he makes himself undroppable. I think that's the only way back for him.
All right. I know you've got deadlines. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I have 2 more questions for you, theoretically. Mm-hmm. We'll see if it ends up being 8, but right now it's 2. Okay. So Gareth Bale, I think the numbers fluctuate, but basically I think in dollars is on $25 million a year, supposedly. He's got a 3-year deal, $75 million. Barcelona have spent, I think since 2014, they've spent, I think, like over $1 billion with sales. I think they're like still spending about 600 million euros. This is maybe a stupid question, but sometimes stupid questions are good questions. Is there any threat of financial fair play or financial irregularities with those bigger teams in La Liga, or is it just that they have so much money and so much influence around the world that they can kind of spend whatever they want?
Well, both Barcelona and Real Madrid are very wary of financial fair play. I don't think. I mean, I'll have to plead a certain degree of ignorance in that I've not looked forensically at the figures recently. Anyway, I did last season for a bit, but so I'm not entirely sure how close to that FFP line they are, particularly after the money that they've spent. Well, I think Barcelona are particularly worried about it because they've not been able to. So they've spent big, and particularly if Neymar arrives, that I think they're. I mean, it's something insane. Their wage bill is. Don't quote me on this, but it's something around 40% of their turnover as a club. Wow. Is wages, which is it's by far the most in Europe. The last time I looked, Real Madrid have at least been able to kind of offload a few players. I mean, that's why you have Marcos Llorente going to Atletico Madrid, is because not that he was on a massive wage, but it's just about bringing the balancing the books a little bit, and Atletico were willing to pay the money. So even though Real Madrid, if they'd had it all their own way, they probably would have kept Marcos Llorente, but they've also kind of got rid of Raul Thomas, who's gone. They've been able to sell a few players, Real Madrid, whereas Barcelona haven't really been able to do that. I mean, that's why Malcolm has gone to Zenit, is basically because they're worried about balancing the books. So, certainly one to keep an eye on, particularly in the Barcelona case. But I think these two clubs are behemoths, aren't they? I mean, they're arguably the two biggest clubs in the world. So, I wouldn't be too worried. I mean, if they get into a bit of trouble, I suspect either of them, Barca or Real Madrid, just go out and sign another sponsor, and slap another logo on their shirt somewhere.
Oh, yeah, good call. They can do that. Right.
get them out of a little bit of trouble that way. But, certainly one to keep an eye on, yeah.
And then I'm not going to say like which team will, but you've got like the big three, sort of the established three of Barca, Atleti, Real Madrid. If there were a team positioned to maybe break that up a little bit, not even necessarily like win La Liga, but is there a team in La Liga right now who you think is poised to potentially like finish top three?
To be honest, the frank answer to that is no at the moment, but I will qualify it. I think Valencia have this kind of long term, not so long term actually, maybe 2 to 3 years. They want to get up there. I mean, Marcelino is an excellent coach. They're spending a little bit of money, as I mentioned earlier. They're going to lose Rodrigo Moreno, but they've already got a replacement there in Maxi Gomez from Celta Vigo, who was wanted by West Ham, and West Ham were willing to pay, like £40 million, I think, for him, and he went to Valencia instead. They've also got Denis Cheryshev, who's come in, Mangala from Man City. They lost Neto, their goalkeeper, to Barcelona, but in a strange sort of swap deal, they got Silesen from Barcelona as well. So their squad looks very strong, and obviously Valencia, I think, there's a case to be made Valencia are as big a club as Atletico Madrid. They are, there is a very clear, I think, big four clubs in terms of size and stature in Spain, and Valencia are that other one. They have seemingly kind of left behind that volatility of a few years ago. However, you just never know with Valencia. It could be creeping around the corner again. So I don't think Valencia will finish in the top three, but I think they very much want to get there as quickly as possible, and their squad is strong.
All right. Well, those were my two questions, Graham. I really appreciate it. It's been a while since we were burned by the transfer window. So I'm hoping like Neymar hasn't signed for Real Madrid while we've been recording. If he has, then
Zidane's been sacked. Exactly. Neymar has gone to Barcelona.
Valverde's been signed by Madrid. It's very confusing. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
But yes, if any of that happens, we look forward to having you back on. But for now, Graham, I just wanted to say thank you again for taking the time to talk to me about La Liga today.
Thanks. It was good fun.